Greetings and welcome to Philosophy 101, Basic Concepts. This is Lecture 2 in the series, and we will address the question, what is epistemology? On the screen are a number of philosophers who have contributed to the question of what is epistemology: Plato, Epicurus, St. Augustine, William of Ockham, René Descartes, Baruch Spinoza, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, John Locke, Bishop George Berkeley, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, John Stuart Mill, Henri Bergson, G.E. Moore, and Bertrand Russell. We mention these philosophers only in passing for this lecture, but we will return to them in greater detail in later lectures in the series. First, let's review the sources for today's lecture. We have the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives by Benjamin Bloom. We have the Encyclopedia of Philosophy. We have the Philosophy of As If by Hans Feinger. We have the Internet Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. We have the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And of course, we have Wikipedia. Let me show you my copies of the print versions of our sources for today. This is the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, Handbook 1, The Cognitive Domain by Benjamin S. Bloom and his colleagues. It was begun as a research project from the American Psychological Association in 1948, and this volume 1 was published in 1956. This is a 1956 original copy. This is volumes 1 and 2 of the Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It comes in, it was originally published in 1967 in 8 volumes, and then reprinted in 1972 in 4 volumes, 2 volumes per book. And that's the copy that I have. And then finally, this is the Philosophy of As If by Hans Feinger. It was originally published in German in 1911 and then translated by C.K. Ogden in 1925. This is what is this? This is 2009. This was reprinted in 2009, so it was out of print for quite a while. Next, let's take a look at some of the online resources we have available to us and some of the ways that you can purchase the print books in case you'd like to add them to your own library. This is a list of the bookmarks for all of the Wikipedia articles and other online articles that I consulted for this particular lecture. Here is the Amazon page for the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives. So Amazon has a copy of it, new from 105, used from $35. So if you'd like to get your own copy, I would highly recommend having one. It's been updated. It was updated in 2000. This is that updated version. It's $45 for a used copy and $90 for a new copy. The Encyclopedia of Philosophy is available from a number of different booksellers. Ranges from $48, $42, $40 on eBay. There is a new version of it published in 2005 in 10 volumes, a second edition. Amazon has it listed as $1,400. I would recommend that you go to your university library and check out that rather than spend that money. Finally, the Philosophy of As If is only $13. I would highly recommend that you get this copy for yourself. This is one of the most unique books in all of philosophy, and we'll be analyzing it in more detail in later on in the series. Now we come to the online resources. This is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. This is the home page. So if we're just going to use the search, we'll just type in epistemology, and it will bring up all of the entries. There's 906 documents with epistemology in the title. The first one, of course, is just the general epistemology. So just click on that, and this is their entry on epistemology. The same thing with the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Go to E, and then find epistemology. And these are 2 very good online resources. They are curated, they are peer-reviewed, they are updated constantly. They're run by universities, so they've got a continuous source of material and staff to keep them up to date. It's always a good idea to know who the people are that you're referring to, so we're going to go over the 8 experts that we're going to refer to in this lecture. First is Benjamin S. Bloom. He was a professor of educational psychology at the University of Chicago. Next is David W. Hamlin. He was a professor of philosophy at the University of London. Next, Sir Bernard Arthur Owen Williams, professor of philosophy at the University of London as well. Next, Richard Henry Popkin, chairman of the philosophy department, University of California at San Diego. Next, Ronald W. Hepburn, a professor of philosophy at the University of Edinburgh. Hans Feinger, professor of philosophy at the University of Halle in Germany. Next, Harry Burroughs Acton, a professor of moral philosophy at the University of Edinburgh. And finally, Rodney Julian Hurst, head of the Department of Logic at Glasgow University, Scotland. All of our lectures are guided by the educational principles outlined by Dr. Bloom and his colleagues in the Taxonomy of Educational Objectives. The 6 elements of the cognitive domain are 1. Knowledge, 2. Comprehension, 3. Application, 4. Analysis, 5. Synthesis, and 6. Evaluation. Now, because these are a taxonomy, and a taxonomy is hierarchical, it is important to understand that knowledge must come before comprehension, knowledge and comprehension must come before application, knowledge, comprehension, and application must come before analysis, and so on. All of the lectures in the Philosophy 101 series are concerned with levels 1 and 2, knowledge and comprehension, mostly with knowledge. Just simple understanding of basic concepts, the names of the basic philosophers, and simple information like that. The later lectures in the series will deal with the upper levels of the taxonomy. Here is just a quick review of what we discussed in the first lecture. Philosophy is basically divided into 5 domains: metaphysics, epistemology, logic, ethics, and aesthetics. And metaphysics is further subdivided into 3 subclassifications: ontology, cosmology, and teleology. Epistemology is defined as the study of knowledge. It answers the question, what is knowledge and what can be known? It comes from the Greek word episteme, which was their word for science or knowledge. The definition of epistemology by Professor David W. Hamlin in his article in the Encyclopedia of Philosophy says that epistemology, or the theory of knowledge, is that branch of philosophy which is concerned with the nature and scope of knowledge, its presuppositions and basis, and the general reliability of claims to knowledge. It is important to note that there are only 3 possible theories of knowledge. One is empiricism, which is knowledge from experience. 2 is rationalism, which is knowledge from reason. And 3 is skepticism, which holds that no knowledge is possible at all. There are 3 other specialized sources of knowledge. One is Fideism, knowledge from faith. The second is Mysticism, which is knowledge from meditation or contemplation. And the third is outlined in the philosophy as if, which is knowledge as fictions. And finally, because metaphysics and epistemology are linked inextricably, there are only 2 possible metaphysical theories: idealism, which is that the world is mental or spiritual, and realism, the belief that the world is material. Professor Hamlin defines empiricism as the theory that experience, that is sense data, rather than reason, is the source of knowledge, and in this sense it is opposed to rationalism. Dr. Williams defines rationalism as the philosophical outlook or program which stresses the power of a priori reason to grasp substantial truths about the world and correspondingly tends to regard natural science as a basically a priori enterprise. Dr. Popkin is the world's foremost expert on skepticism, and he says that skepticism, as a critical philosophical attitude, questions the reliability of the knowledge claims made by philosophers and others. Originally, the Greek term skeptikos meant inquirers. They, the skeptics, have questioned whether any necessary or indubitable information can actually be gained about the real nature of things. Fideism is closely linked with skepticism, and Dr. Popkins says that Fideism is the view that truth in religion is ultimately based on faith rather than on reasoning or evidence. This claim has been presented in many forms, usually as a way of asserting that the fundamental tenets of religion cannot be established by proofs or by empirical evidence, but must be accepted on faith. Dr. Hepburn says about mysticism that a mystical experience is not the act of acquiring religious or theological information, but is often taken to be a confrontation or encounter with the divine source of the world's being and man's salvation. Dr. Feiner talks about fictions and reminds us that it was in William of Ockham, note the alternative spelling for Ockham's name, that we find for the first time a clear and definite treatment of the fictional nature of general ideas. He fully understood that ficta, as they were called in the writings of the Middle Ages, are practically necessary and must be recognized in this sense. Dr. Acton says that idealism, in its philosophical sense, is the view that mind and spiritual values are fundamental in the world as a whole. Thus, idealism is opposed to naturalism, that is, to the view that mind and spiritual values have emerged from or are reducible to material things and processes. Philosophical idealism is also opposed to realism. Dr. Hurst says that realism in modern philosophy is used for the view that material objects exist externally to us and independently of our sense experience. Realism is thus opposed to idealism, which holds that no such material objects or external realities exist apart from our knowledge or consciousness of them, the whole universe thus being dependent on the mind or in some sense mental. Now let's review. Bloom's taxonomy of the cognitive domain is divided up into 6 elements. First is knowledge, second is comprehension, third is application, fourth is analysis, fifth is synthesis, and sixth is evaluation. All of the Philosophy 101 lectures are dealing with knowledge at the first level of the cognitive domain. All of the later lectures will be dealing with the upper levels of the domain. Now, because we are dealing with knowledge, the first level of the domain, it is important that you commit each of these terms to memory and that you understand their definitions, because they will recur again and again and again in all of our discussions. So first, there are only 3 possible theories of knowledge. The one is empiricism, knowledge from experience. Second is rationalism, knowledge from reason. And the third is skepticism, that no knowledge is possible at all. There are 3 other specialized sources of knowledge: Fideism, which is knowledge from faith; Mysticism, which is knowledge from meditation; the philosophy of as if, which describes knowledge as fictions; and there are only 2 possible metaphysical theories: idealism, which is the belief that the world is mental or spiritual; and realism, the belief that the world is material. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you stay tuned for more lectures in this series.